never imagined I'd inherit a farm. I wasn't a farmer, didn't even like the countryside much. But when I got that call in the middle of a gray Tuesday afternoon, something about the silence on the other end told me this wasn't the kind of thing you could ignore. The voice said, "Mr. Barnes, this is the Keokuk County Clerk's office. Your great-uncle, Walter Barnes, has passed away. You've been listed as his next of kin." There was a pause, papers shuffling. "He left you the property." I didn't even know I had a great-uncle in Iowa. My family never talked about him, just another name in the old family tree no one cared to remember. Still, I was 37, working on and off as an electrician, divorced, broke, and pretty much running out of reasons to say no to anything that might look like a new start. So that weekend, I packed my truck, left Des Moines behind, and drove south through miles of rolling corn and rust-colored barns until the GPS turned blank and the road turned to gravel. By the time I reached the property, the sun was already low, bleeding orange light over the fields. The farmhouse sat alone at the edge of a massive cornfield, its white paint long gone, replaced by gray wood that creaked with every gust of wind. The porch leaned to one side, and the windows stared out like hollow eyes. It felt like the kind of place that remembered everything. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of oil and soiled. Old boots by the door, a single chair in the kitchen, and a faded calendar on the wall still turned to October 1983. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside made the house sigh and pop, the wood expanding with each gust. At some point, I got up to make coffee, though I wasn't even sure the stove worked. That's when I found it, an old notebook lying inside a drawer under the sink. The pages were yellowed and curled, but the handwriting was still legible. Most of it was empty, but one page caught my eye. "Don't leave the fields alone after harvest. The corn remembers." I stared at it for a long time. It was such an odd thing to write, but maybe it was just an old farmer's superstition. I put it back, told myself I'd probably laugh about it in the morning. But as I went to bed, something outside made me pause. The wind had stopped completely, yet the corn still moved a slow ripple that spread through the field like a living thing breathing in the dark. And I swear, I could have sworn I heard something faint under that sound, something that didn't belong to the wind at all. A whisper, just one word. "Eli." The second day felt slower. The sun rose pale and cold, the kind that doesn't warm anything. I spent the morning fixing the front gate and trying to clear out the barn. Inside, I found tools hanging exactly where my uncle must have left them decades ago. Clean, polished, like someone still used them. Every sound in that place had weight. The groan of the wood, the hiss of wind through the eaves. It all carried like a memory that refused to die. That night, after dinner, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the corn ripple under the moonlight. The field seemed to move in slow waves, even though the air was perfectly still. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was a coyote or maybe a stray dog, but the sound came from too deep inside the field. A whisper, soft, almost tender, like a voice carried through miles of dry stalks. "Don't go." I froze. The voice was faint, childlike, almost kind. I stepped off the porch, the gravel crunching under my boots. "Hello?" I called. Nothing. Just the rustle of corn, the same rhythm as breathing. Then it came again, closer. "Stay with us." I felt the air shift. The corn moved, not with the wind, but with intent. The stalks leaned toward me as if listening. The flashlight trembled in my hand. The beam caught something between the rows. Movement, a flicker of pale cloth, a shape slipping away. I backed up until my shoulders hit the door. Then, from inside the house, a faint click. The radio on the kitchen counter turned itself on. Static, but underneath, barely audible, a child's laughter looping softly. And then a whisper mixed with the static hiss. "Don't leave the field alone." The voice faded, replaced by the sound of wind through thousands of hollow stems. Except there was no wind. I turned off the radio, unplugged it, and went straight to bed. But even with the power out, I could still hear it, through the floorboards, through the walls, the corn, whispering to itself. And somewhere in that chorus of sound, one word repeated again and again, a name that didn't belong to me. Walter. The next morning, I drove into town. It wasn't much of a drive, just 20 minutes of cracked highway lined with rusted mailboxes and forgotten barns. But the silence along the way felt unnatural. Even the birds avoided the sky above those fields. Keokuk's main street looked frozen in time. A diner, a hardware store, a small gas station, and a post office that probably hadn't been renovated since the 70s. A hand-painted sign read, "Welcome to Keokuk, a good place to grow." But the irony of it wasn't lost on me. I stopped at the diner, figuring I could grab coffee and maybe learn something about my uncle. The bell over the door jingled as I stepped inside. Everyone turned to look. It wasn't the friendly kind of look you give a stranger. It was the kind where people recognize a last name before they recognize a face. A waitress in her 50s approached, her smile polite but tight. "Morning," she said, pouring coffee before I even asked. "Passing through?" I shook my head. "Actually, I'm staying out at the Barnes property. My Uncle Walter." The cup stopped midair. She blinked twice and set the pot down carefully. "Oh," she said softly. "Your family." The word didn't sound like a compliment. She hesitated, then leaned in. "Has anyone told you what happened out there?" I frowned. "No, should they have?" Her eyes darted toward the corner booth, where an old man with a feed cap stared at us over his plate. Finally, she spoke. "Back in '83, 3 children went missing near your uncle's land. 2 brothers and a neighbor girl. They were playing hide and seek in the corn. Never came out." I felt the air go colder around me. "What happened?" I asked. "They searched for weeks," she said. "Dogs, volunteers, police. No footprints, no signs of struggle. Your uncle swore he heard them calling from the fields that night. Said the corn was talking." She looked down, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He tried to burn it once. Said the ground wouldn't take fire. After that, he just kept it trimmed. Never harvested again. Never sold the land." I paid and left. Nobody said goodbye. When I stepped outside, the whole street had gone silent. Even the sound of tires on pavement seemed to fade away. By the time I got back to the farm, the sun was setting behind the field, turning the corn black against a crimson sky. I tried to shake off the story, tell myself it was just rural gossip. But that night, as I locked the doors, I heard it again, the sound that wasn't the wind. Children laughing. It echoed faintly from the corn, soft and playful, like a memory replaying itself. I opened the door and shouted, "Who's out there?" The laughter stopped. And then It came back. But it wasn't laughter anymore. It was my own voice, repeating the same words back to me. "Who's out there?" The next morning, the world outside my window looked the same. Gray light, still air, the corn swaying like it was breathing. But something in me had changed. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt heavy, aware. I spent the early hours pacing the porch, trying to convince myself that the laughter, the voices, everything I'd heard the night before had been nothing more than exhaustion. But when the wind picked up, carrying that faint rustling, I realized the corn was moving against the direction of the breeze. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my old machete from the shed, marked the first row with orange tape, and stepped into the field. The sound changed immediately. Outside, the wind had been gentle, but inside the corn, it was different. It didn't sound like air. It sounded like breathing. The rows seemed endless, the space between them shrinking as I walked deeper. The stalks were taller now, thicker, their husks darker, almost wet. I tried to ignore the unease crawling up my neck. I told myself I just needed to find the center, maybe prove there was nothing here. But halfway through, I started noticing things. Small trinkets hanging from the stalks, a child's ribbon, a tiny shoe half buried in dirt, a broken toy tractor still caked in mud. They looked old, very old. My boots sank deeper with each step until the ground felt spongy beneath me, soft and warm like the earth itself was pulsing. Then, without warning, the path opened into a clearing. It was a perfect circle. No corn grew here, just dark soil, and in the middle, a single wooden cross, weathered and leaning. Around it were faded pieces of blue and pink ribbon, tied to the stalks like makeshift memorials. I knelt down and brushed the dirt from the cross's base. Something metallic caught the light. An old dog tag, half buried. The name on it was almost gone, but I could still make out the first letters. W.B., Walter Barnes, my uncle. The soil around the cross was darker than the rest, almost black and damp. And then I heard it. Not from far away this time, right beside me. A whisper. "Help us." I turned, swinging the flashlight wildly. The beam hit the corn and froze me in place. The stalks weren't standing still anymore. They were bending inward, closing around the clearing. The leaves trembled like fingers reaching for me. Then, in the corner of my eye, movement. Something shifting inside the stalks, pressing against them from within. The shapes began to form. Arms, shoulders, heads outlined under the husks like bodies trapped inside the plants. And from one of them, a small pale hand pushed through, slick with dew, curling weakly in the air. The smell hit next, sweet and metallic, like blood left out in the sun. I stumbled backward, stepping on something soft. When I looked down, I saw a corn cob split open where my boot had crushed it. It wasn't corn inside, it was teeth. Rows of tiny human teeth embedded in the pale flesh of the cob. I ran. Branches slashed at my face, and the whispering turned to screams, high, childlike, endless. The corn didn't just rustle now, it howled. I didn't stop until I saw the house. And when I slammed the door behind me, the radio came on again, crackling through static, and a man's voice whispered through the speaker. "Eli, the corn remembers." I don't remember sleeping that night. I must have blacked out at some point, because when I opened my eyes, it was already dusk again. The kind of gray light that makes you wonder if the day ever really came. The field was quiet, perfectly still, as if nothing had happened. I packed my truck. I told myself I'd drive until I hit another state line, sell the property, never look back. But the minute I turned the ignition, the headlights flickered, and the radio, which I'd ripped from its socket the night before, came back on. Static. Then a voice, slow and deliberate. "You left them behind." I froze. The lights outside the cabin were flickering now, every bulb pulsing in rhythm with that low hum from the field. The corn wasn't still anymore. It was swaying again, no wind, no movement, just that breathing rhythm. Something in me snapped. I grabbed a can of gasoline from the shed, marched to the edge of the corn, and emptied it over the first few rows. The smell was sharp and desperate, like the air before lightning strikes. "If you can whisper," I said through clenched teeth, "you can burn." I struck the match. The flame hesitated just for a second, and then caught, crawling up the stalks like veins of gold. The crackling drowned out the whispers, and for a moment, I felt relief. But then the fire stopped spreading. The flames froze midair, bending backward, as if something was breathing them in. A sound rose from deep within the corn, not a scream, not a cry, but a chorus of voices layered on top of each other, human and inhuman all at once. The ground began to shake, soft vibrations that rippled through the dirt, through my feet, through my chest. And then I saw them. Figures, dozens of them, pushing out from between the rows, not walking, growing, their bodies thin and colorless, their faces smooth like wax, eyes replaced by tiny kernels that glowed faintly from within. One of them stepped forward, the smallest one, a little girl with tangled hair and dirt covering her hands. She looked up at me and smiled. "You came back," she whispered. "He'll be so happy." Behind her, the corn split open. From the soil rose a massive shape, a figure made of roots and stalks twisted together, towering over the field, its chest hollow, glowing faintly with that same golden light. And inside its rib cage, faces, dozens of them. I dropped the gas can and stumbled backward. The figure tilted its head, and all the faces within it turned toward me at once. When it spoke, it wasn't one voice, it was thousands. "You're one of us now." The next thing I remember is waking up in the driver's seat of my truck, miles down the road. The engine was running. My clothes smelled like smoke. When I looked in the rearview mirror, the horizon behind me glowed faintly, not orange, not red, but gold. They say wildfires are common this time of year. That's what the local news called it. Spontaneous ignition due to dry soil. But I know better. Because last week, when the wind carried the smell of burning corn across my porch, I heard it again, that same soft, childlike whisper carried through the static of the storm. We're still growing. And when the thunder rolled across the valley, it wasn't thunder. It was laughter. If this story chilled you to the bone, leave a like, share it, and subscribe to the Horror States for more real American nightmares. Every week, we uncover a new legend buried in the soil of forgotten towns. Because out here, the past doesn't stay buried.